My son called me a ridiculous old lady on TikTok, and millions of people laughed at me. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just watched in silence. But the next morning, when he walked into the bank to withdraw his rent money, the teller looked up and whispered, "Sir, your balance is zero. All your accounts are gone." His face turned red, his hands shook, and in that moment he realized life doesn't laugh back. "Your account balance is zero, sir." Those words hit my son, Brian, like a thunderbolt. The bank teller's voice was calm, but her eyes widened as she looked at the computer screen. "All your accounts have been deleted," she whispered again, trying not to draw attention. Brian's face turned pale. His hands began to tremble as he leaned closer to the counter. "What do you mean zero? That can't be right," he stammered, his voice shaking. The teller double-checked, typing again and glancing at him with pity. "I'm sorry, sir. Everything is gone." For a moment, Brian stood frozen. People in the bank started to turn their heads toward him. His lips parted as if he wanted to shout, but no words came out. His body swayed, and he gripped the counter to steady himself. Just yesterday, he had posted a TikTok calling me a ridiculous old lady, laughing with his friends as if mocking his own mother was something to be proud of. I had seen the video. It broke my heart, but I didn't say a word. I just smiled and went on with my day, pretending not to know. And now, standing there in that bank with sweat dripping down his forehead, he was learning a painful lesson that life has a way of humbling even the proudest heart. But how did it come to this moment? What made a son mock his mother, and what happened between that video and this shocking morning at the bank? Let me take you back to the beginning. Brian was my only son. After his father passed away years ago, I raised him all by myself. I worked hard to make sure he had everything he needed. Food, clothes, school fees. I never complained, even when I had to take on 2 cleaning jobs at once. I told myself it was all worth it, because one day my boy would make me proud. For years he did. Brian was a bright child, clever, funny, and full of dreams. But everything began to change when he turned 21. He started spending all his time online making TikTok videos. At first, I didn't understand what it was all about. He said it was just for fun, that he was building his brand. He would film short clips, doing jokes or dances, and sometimes include me in them. I didn't mind. I even laughed when he asked me to do silly things on camera. But as time went by, I began to notice something strange. The jokes were no longer funny. They were cruel. He started mocking the way I dressed, the way I spoke, even the wrinkles on my face. Once he told his followers, "My mom still believes in cooking at home instead of ordering food. Old people just don't get it." His friends laughed in the comments, and he seemed so proud. I tried to talk to him one evening. "Brian," I said gently, "don't make fun of your mother online. People might laugh, but it hurts." He rolled his eyes. "Mom, it's just jokes. You're too sensitive. That's why people call your generation ridiculous." That word, ridiculous, stuck in my heart. But I let it go. I didn't want to argue with him. Maybe I was too soft. Maybe I just loved him too much to fight. The next morning, I found him in the living room, laughing over his phone. "What's funny?" I asked. He smirked. "You'll see soon." Later that day, one of my neighbors, Mrs. Harper, came to me with pity in her eyes. "Linda, dear, have you seen what your son posted on TikTok?" I shook my head. "No, why?" She handed me her phone. And there it was, a video of me trying to fix the old curtain in our living room while he filmed from behind, mocking me. "Look at this ridiculous old lady," he said in the video, "still living like it's 1975. His friends laughed in the comments, calling me names. I felt something inside me break that day. I wanted to cry, to shout, to ask him why he would humiliate me like that. But instead, I wiped my tears and said nothing. That night, he came home late, smelling of alcohol and laughter. "Mom, did you see my video? It got over 50,000 views in one day." I forced a smile. "That's good, Brian." He laughed proudly. "Finally, I'm getting noticed." When he went to bed, I sat alone in the dark living room, staring at his childhood pictures on the wall. I remembered the little boy who used to hug me after every school play. The boy who once said, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll buy you a big house." Where did that boy go? Days passed. Brian became more careless. He stopped going to his part-time job. He spent money carelessly, buying new clothes, gadgets, and even paying for promotions on TikTok. I warned him to save the rent money I gave him, but he waved me off. Relax, Mom. My videos will pay soon. I'll be rich before you know it. I sighed. Just make sure you don't lose what you already have, Brian. He laughed. Lose? Me? Never. But fate had its own plans. The night before the bank incident, something strange happened. I had gone to bed early, but around midnight, I heard Brian pacing in his room. He was on a call arguing. I could hear him say things like, "No, that can't be right. What do you mean my account is restricted?" The next morning, I watched him rush out of the house, still in yesterday's clothes, heading straight for the bank. I didn't follow him. I just waited, sitting by the window, knitting quietly as if nothing was wrong. 2 hours later, he came back, his face pale, his steps heavy. His phone was in his hand, and his eyes were red. He didn't say a word. I looked at him softly and asked, "Is everything okay, son?" He looked at me, the same mother he once mocked online, and his lips quivered. "Mom, everything's gone. My savings, my rent money, all my accounts are empty." I didn't respond immediately. I just placed my hand gently on his shoulder and said, "Maybe now you'll understand something, Brian." He stared at me, confused and afraid. Understand what? I gave him a long, knowing look. That when you mock the hands that raised you, life itself might take away the things those hands helped you build. His eyes filled with tears. "Mom, are you saying?" Before he could finish, there was a loud knock on the door. We both turned to look. Brian frowned. Who could that be? The knock came again, louder, more urgent. And that was the moment everything changed. The knocking grew louder, sharp, impatient, and heavy against the wooden door. Brian froze. His eyes darted to me, fear flickering across his face. "Mom, are you expecting someone?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm not." The knock came again. Bang! 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 "Open up. Brian Wilson, we need to talk," a man's deep voice shouted from outside. Brian's face turned white. He hesitated, then walked toward the door, each step slow and uneasy. When he opened it, 2 men in dark suits stood there. One was holding a folder. The other wore glasses and looked serious. "Mr. Brian Wilson?" the man with glasses asked. "Yes," Brian replied weakly. "We're from the Fraud Investigation Department. We need to ask you some questions regarding recent suspicious activities on your bank accounts." Brian blinked. "What? Fraud? No, there must be a mistake. I didn't do anything wrong." The man opened the folder and showed him some papers. "Multiple withdrawals were made from your account to unknown destinations overseas last night. The system flagged your account for possible hacking or illegal transfers. All your funds have been frozen pending investigation." Brian's mouth dropped open. "Hacking? How? How's that possible?" I stood quietly in the corner, my heart pounding. The whole situation felt like a bad dream. My son, my only son, standing there, trembling as 2 strangers accused him of something serious. The man continued, "We also noticed your accounts were accessed through several devices and locations. Do you share your login details with anyone?" Brian shook his head. "No. I mean, maybe once. I used my friend's Wi-Fi last week, but..." The man interrupted. "Then you might have been compromised. Unfortunately, you'll need to visit our main office to file a report." Brian rubbed his face, overwhelmed. This can't be happening. When the men finally left, he shut the door slowly, leaning his forehead against it. He looked broken. I walked to him quietly. "Brian," I said softly, "sit down." He turned around, tears brimming in his eyes. "Mom, I swear I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to make you proud. I thought if I became famous online, you'd finally see me as successful." I sat beside him and sighed. "Brian, success is not about how many people laugh at your jokes online. It's about how many people respect your heart." He dropped his head into his hands. "I feel like such a fool." I put my arm around him. Sometimes life has to break your pride before it can teach you wisdom. He nodded silently. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the soft ticking of the old wall clock. Then suddenly his phone buzzed on the table. A notification popped up, from TikTok. He reached for it slowly, his hands still trembling. When he opened the app, his face went blank. What now? I asked carefully. He turned the screen toward me. His TikTok account gone. Completely deleted. All his videos, followers, and likes had disappeared. Account permanently suspended for violation of community guidelines. The message read. Brian gasped. No. This can't be happening. That account was my life. My fans, my videos, everything. I looked at him quietly. Brian, maybe this is a sign. He looked at me confused. A sign. Yes. A sign that you need to stop chasing people's applause and start fixing what's real, yourself. He didn't respond. He just sat there, staring at the blank screen. Later that day, things got even worse. Brian received a call from his landlord. I could hear the man shouting through the phone. Brian, you said you'd pay the rent today. Where's the money? Brian tried to explain, his voice shaking. Sir, there's been a problem with my bank account. I just need a few days. No more days, the landlord barked. You have 48 hours to pay or you're out. When he ended the call, Brian slumped onto the couch, defeated. Mom, I'm finished. I've lost everything. My money, my followers, even my home. I looked at him calmly and said, You haven't lost everything, Brian. You still have me. He looked up, tears in his eyes. After everything I said about you, after that video, how can you still care? I smiled sadly. Because a mother's heart doesn't stop loving, even when it's broken. That night, Brian barely touched his dinner. I watched him from across the table, remembering all the nights I used to stay awake worrying about his future. Now I saw that future crumbling in front of him. When he finally went to bed, I cleaned the table quietly and sat alone by the window again. Outside, the wind was howling, bending the trees. The house felt colder than usual. I whispered a small prayer. God, please help my son see the light before it's too late. But just as I was about to get up, I heard something outside, footsteps. Slow, cautious footsteps on the porch. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then there came another knock on the door. Not loud this time, soft, almost gentle. I looked toward Brian's room. He was asleep. The knock came again. Tap, tap, tap. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. I walked to the door and asked, Who's there? There was silence for a moment. Then a voice, calm, deep and unfamiliar, said, Mrs. Wilson, we need to talk about your son. My hands went cold. Who are you? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. The voice replied, I'm the man your son owes money to, and if he can't pay you'll have to. I gasped. My heart dropped to my stomach. Before I could speak, the man continued, You have until tomorrow evening. Then silence. When I opened the door, no one was there. Only a folded piece of paper lying on the ground. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was a note, with Brian's name on it and a large number written beneath it. I felt my knees go weak. The room started spinning. I clutched the note to my chest, whispering, Oh, Brian, what have you done? I stood frozen at the door, clutching the folded paper in my trembling hands. The night was still, but inside me, a storm was brewing. My breath came in short gasps as I unfolded the note under the dim yellow light from the living room lamp. In big, rough letters it read, $12,000 due in 24 hours. No excuses. We know where you live. $12,000. My heart nearly stopped. How could Brian owe that kind of money? I sank slowly onto the old couch, the paper shaking in my hands. My mind raced back to all the times I'd seen him chatting secretly on his phone, whispering, hiding messages. I thought it was just his online friends, but now I realized something darker was going on. I got up and quietly walked to Brian's room. He was fast asleep, lying on his side, the faint light from his phone screen flickering across his face. His innocent look made my heart ache even more. How could my son have fallen into such trouble? I hesitated for a moment, then picked up his phone. I knew it was wrong, but I had to understand what was happening. The phone wasn't locked. He must have forgotten to set a password after all the chaos earlier. When I opened his messages, my heart sank. There were dozens of chats with a contact saved as Jay. The most recent one read, "Jay, you better have my money tomorrow, bro. I don't care what happened with your bank. I fronted you that loan so you could grow your online page. I want it back. Brian, I told you my accounts got hacked. Give me a few more days. Jay, you've got one. Or your mom pays for it." I covered my mouth, trying not to scream. My own son had borrowed money, probably from a loan shark, to fund his social media fame. Tears welled in my eyes. "Oh, Brian, what have you done to yourself?" I whispered. Suddenly, he stirred in his sleep. "Mom," he mumbled half awake. I quickly set the phone down. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said softly. "Go back to sleep." He turned over and drifted off again. But I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, watching the moon fade into dawn, wondering how to save my son from the mess he'd created. When morning came, Brian walked into the kitchen with dark circles under his eyes. He looked at me and sighed. "Mom, I'm sorry about everything. I really am." I smiled weakly. "Sit down, Brian. We need to talk." He frowned. "About what?" I slid the note across the table. His face turned pale the instant he saw it. "Where did you get this?" "It was on the porch last night," I said quietly. "Who is Jay?" He froze. "Mom, I can explain." I crossed my arms. "Then explain." He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "I borrowed some money to boost my TikTok account. Jay promised he could help me buy followers and promote my page. I thought if I went viral, brands would start paying me." My chest tightened. "You borrowed money for fake fame?" He nodded slowly. "At first, it was working. I was getting more views, more comments. But when I couldn't pay him back, he started threatening me. I didn't think he'd come after you." "Brian," I said, my voice breaking. "You put us both in danger." "I know, Mom. I'm sorry," he cried, burying his face in his hands. "I just wanted to make things better. I thought maybe I could finally give you the life you deserve. But now I've made everything worse." Tears filled my eyes. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was sorrow. "You don't fix life by breaking yourself, Brian. You fix it by facing the truth." He nodded slowly, sniffling. "What do we do now?" I took a deep breath. "We'll go to the police." He shot up immediately. "No. You don't know these people, Mom. If we go to the police, they'll come after us." "Then what choice do we have?" I asked. "We can't pay $12,000. They'll destroy you, Brian." He paced the floor, his hands in his hair. "There has to be another way. Maybe I can talk to him, reason with him." "Brian," I started, but he was already heading toward the door. "I have to fix this, Mom." "I'll handle it," he said firmly. Then he rushed out before I could stop him. I ran to the window and watched him disappear down the street. My stomach twisted in fear. Something told me this wouldn't end well. Hours passed. I sat by the phone, praying for him to call. The clock ticked loudly. Noon came. Then 1 o'clock. Then 2. Still nothing. By evening, I was pacing the floor, tears streaming down my cheeks. I called his phone, no answer. Then suddenly, around 7 p.m., the door burst open. Brian stumbled in, his shirt torn, his lip bleeding. "Brian!" I screamed, rushing to him. "What happened?" He collapsed onto the floor, clutching his stomach. They found me, Mom," he groaned. I knelt beside him, terrified. "Who?" "Jay." He nodded weakly. I went to meet him to beg for more time. But he wasn't alone. There were 3 of them. They took my watch, my phone, even my jacket. And then they said if I don't bring the money by tomorrow night, they'll come for you. My heart stopped. "For me?" He nodded again, tears mixing with blood on his cheek. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean for this to happen." I held him tightly as he sobbed in my arms. Outside, thunder rumbled. Rain began to fall, tapping against the windows like a warning. I looked out into the stormy darkness, fear gripping my heart. But deep inside, something else began to rise, determination. If those men thought they could threaten my family, they had no idea what kind of mother they were dealing with. I wiped Brian's tears and said firmly, "Enough crying. Tomorrow I'll end this." He looked up at me confused. "Mom, what are you going to do?" I stood, my jaw tight, my eyes cold. "I'm going to find Jay." The rain had not stopped all night. It poured in thick sheets, drumming against the roof, sliding down the window panes like tears. Brian lay on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, his face pale and swollen from the beating. I sat beside him, holding a cup of warm tea, my mind racing. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that note, those cold words, "We know where you live." I looked at my son. My heart broke all over again. Once, he was a sweet boy who used to bring me flowers from the garden. Now he was a man tangled in lies, debts, and danger. But no matter what he had done, he was still my son. And I would not let anyone harm him. When dawn came, I rose quietly, put on my old raincoat, and picked up my handbag. Brian stirred. "Mom? Where are you going?" I turned to him and said softly, "To fix what you broke." He tried to sit up. "Mom, no. Please, you can't. These people are dangerous." I gave him a small, sad smile. I've faced danger before, Brian. I faced poverty, hunger, and a world that didn't care if I lived or died. Don't worry. A mother's love is stronger than fear. Before he could argue, I was out the door. I walked to the address I found in one of Brian's messages, an old warehouse near the river. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds. My shoes splashed through puddles as I made my way down the muddy road. When I reached the warehouse, I saw 3 men standing near the entrance. One of them was tall and muscular, with a scar running down his cheek. Another had a cigarette hanging from his lips. The third, sitting on a crate, looked no older than Brian, thin, nervous, and pale. I recognized him from Brian's messages. "Jay." He saw me and frowned. "Who are you?" I took a deep breath. "I'm Brian's mother." He stood up slowly. "You shouldn't be here, lady." I met his gaze firmly. "And yet here I am. I came to talk." The scar-faced man laughed. "Talk? You owe $12,000, old woman. We don't talk. We collect." Jay lifted a hand to silence him. "Wait. Let her speak." I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "You gave my son money for something foolish. I understand that. But he can't pay you back now. He made mistakes, he's just a boy trying to find his way." Jay looked at me coldly. "A boy who owes me $12,000. Do you think I run a charity?" I swallowed hard. "How much time will you give me?" The men laughed again. "She wants time," one mocked. Jay walked closer, his voice low. 24 hours. Then things get ugly." I stood my ground. "You won't touch my son." Jay's eyes narrowed. "Or what?" For a moment, the rain was the only sound between us. Then I said quietly, "Or I'll go to the police and tell them everything I know about your fake accounts, your illegal deals, and the way you use young people like my son to wash money." Jay's expression changed instantly. His lips tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," I said firmly. "I read his messages. I saw the transactions. You made him transfer money through his bank, didn't you? You told him it was for promotions, but you were using him to move stolen funds." Jay's jaw clenched. The men shifted uneasily. "You think an old woman can scare us?" the scar-faced man barked. I took a step closer, unafraid. "Not me. But the police can. And I have every message saved on Brian's phone. If anything happens to him, or me, they'll know exactly who to look for." Jay turned away, cursing under his breath. Then, after a long silence, he said, "You've got guts, lady. Fine. You win this round." He snapped his fingers, and the other men stepped back. "We'll forget the debt. But if I ever see Brian online again pretending to be famous, we'll finish what we started." I exhaled slowly, my heart pounding. "You have my word. He's done with that life." Jay nodded once. "Then get out." I turned and walked away, my legs trembling, but I didn't let them see it. The rain had eased by the time I reached home. When I opened the door, Brian was pacing the floor, his eyes red from crying. "Mom, I thought He stopped when he saw me. "You're okay." I smiled weakly. "I'm fine, Brian. It's over." He ran to me and hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I never meant for any of this to happen." I held him close. I know, my son. But you must learn from this. He nodded, wiping his tears. I'll never make fun of you again. I'll delete TikTok, everything. I just want a normal life. I smiled and brushed his hair back. Good. Because fame built on shame never lasts, Brian. Only respect does. We sat together for a long while, the quiet filling the room like a soft blanket. For the first time in months, I felt peace, fragile, but real. Then, just as I was about to get up to make us some tea, Brian's phone buzzed again. He froze. Don't answer it, I said. He hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. He picked it up and read the message. His face turned pale. I snatched the phone from his hand. The message read, "You think you're safe now, old lady? We don't forgive. We multiply." My blood ran cold. The message was from an unknown number. I looked up slowly at Brian. They're not done with us yet. He swallowed hard. What do we do now? I turned toward the window, the rain starting to fall again, heavier this time. I could see my reflection in the glass, tired eyes, but fierce determination. I whispered, "Now we fight back." The next morning the rain had stopped, but the world outside still looked gray, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. I didn't sleep at all that night. The message still echoed in my mind. We don't forgive. We multiply. I knew then that Jay and his people wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. They weren't just loan sharks. They were criminals, dangerous ones, and they were coming for us. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I had faced too much in life to bow down now. When Brian woke up, I was already dressed, sitting at the kitchen table with a small notebook, a pen, and his phone in front of me. He rubbed his eyes. "Mom, you didn't sleep?" I shook my head. "No, Brian. I was thinking." He frowned. "About what?" "About how to end this, once and for all." He looked confused. "What do you mean?" I pushed the phone toward him. "We're not running, Brian. We're going to expose them." He blinked. "Expose them? Mom, are you serious? These people don't play games." I looked at him firmly. "Neither do I. You said it yourself. They're dangerous. But if we stay silent, they'll only keep hurting others like you. We're not the first victims, and we won't be the last. Someone has to stop them." He hesitated. "But how?" I opened the notebook, revealing pages of notes and copied messages. I saved everything, the texts, the voice notes, the bank transactions, even their threats. "You didn't delete them, Brian, so I did. I made copies." He stared at me in shock. "You did all that?" I smiled faintly. "I may be an old lady, but I'm not stupid." Brian laughed weakly despite himself. "Mom, you're unbelievable." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We'll go to the police together. But first, I need you to tell them everything. No lies this time." He nodded slowly, his eyes shining with guilt and relief. By noon, we were at the police station. The officer at the front desk listened quietly as we explained what happened. When I showed him the notebook, he raised his eyebrows. "This is serious," he said, flipping through the pages. "We've been tracking a group using online promotions and fake investments to scam young people. These names, they match." Brian's eyes widened. "So they've done this to others too?" The officer nodded. "Yes. You're lucky they didn't take more from you." He motioned for us to follow him to an office, where a detective named Carter sat behind a cluttered desk. Detective Carter was tall, serious, and spoke in a low, calm voice. He listened carefully as I retold everything, from the first loan to the threats at our door. When I finished, he said, "Mrs. Wilson, what you did was brave. But now we need to make sure it counts. We'll trace their accounts, set up a sting operation, and end this for good." Brian shifted nervously. "Will they come for us?" Detective Carter smiled slightly. "Not if we get them first." 2 days later, the plan was set. The police asked Brian to send a message pretending he wanted to pay off his debt. They told him to arrange a meeting at the same warehouse. They would hide nearby and arrest them when they arrived. That night, as Brian prepared the message, I watched him closely. He still looked scared, but I could also see something new in his eyes, courage. He hit send. Minutes later, Jay replied. "Jay, smart boy. Meet me tomorrow at 8 p.m. same place. Bring the cash. The trap was set. The next evening, we arrived at the warehouse under police protection. Detective Carter and his team were hidden in unmarked cars nearby. I waited nervously, my hands gripping the rosary in my pocket. At exactly 8 p.m., headlights appeared in the distance. A black car stopped by the warehouse, and 3 men stepped out, Jay and his 2 thugs. Brian stood near the entrance, pretending to be alone. You got the money? Jay asked. Brian nodded. It's in the bag. Good, Jay said, smirking. Because I don't like second chances. As he reached for the bag, a voice shouted from the darkness. Police! Hands up! Jay froze. Red and blue lights flashed as officers swarmed the area. The thugs tried to run, but they didn't get far. Within seconds, they were handcuffed and surrounded. I stepped out of hiding just as Detective Carter approached me. It's over, Mrs. Wilson. We've got them. I let out a long breath I didn't realize I was holding. My knees went weak, but Brian caught me before I fell. It's okay, Mom, he whispered. It's really over. Tears of relief filled my eyes. 2 weeks later, things slowly returned to normal. Jay and his group were charged with fraud, extortion, and multiple other crimes. The police told us that our evidence helped them uncover a large criminal ring operating across several cities. Brian started working again, not online but at a local grocery store. He wanted to rebuild his life, one honest step at a time. Every evening, he'd come home, help me cook, and tell me stories about his day. The house, once filled with tension, now echoed with laughter again. One night, as we sat at the dinner table, Brian looked at me with teary eyes. Mom, I don't deserve you. I smiled softly. You're my son. You don't have to earn my love, just learn from it. He reached across the table and took my hand. I've learned, Mom. I promise I'll never forget this. Fame doesn't mean anything if it costs me my dignity, or you. I nodded, my heart full. That's all I ever wanted to hear. We sat quietly for a moment, just enjoying the peace. Outside, the stars were bright, and for the first time in a long while, the night felt gentle. Then Brian chuckled. You know, Mom, you really showed them. You're not a ridiculous old lady after all. I laughed, wiping a tear. I never was. You just needed life to show you. He grinned. It did. And it showed me that my mom's stronger than any of them. I leaned back in my chair, smiling proudly. Remember that, Brian. Respect your roots, or life will remind you where you came from. He nodded firmly. I will, Mom. Always. As we clinked our glasses of juice together, I whispered to myself, not in anger, not in pain, but in peace. Some lessons are learned the hard way, but as long as they're learned, it's never too late. Respect is a seed. When you water it, it grows love. When you mock it, it grows pain. My son learned his lesson, and I hope someone out there learns from it too. Don't ever look down on your parents, because life has its own way of humbling the proud. If this story touched your heart, hit the like button, drop a comment about what you learned, and subscribe for more grandma stories that will move your soul. 2 hearts.